I mean, everything's extremely fragmented and a public that's increasingly detached from its governments. We are increasingly detached. You wouldn't think that, right? But look at the numbers. Look what people are saying. But when you look at line stuff, you would. But you got to remember that's only a certain section of the country that's majority isn't doing that. There's an economic chasm going in America. There's two Americas. Underneath this political storm lies something deeper: the economy. Like they used to say in the 90s, it's the economy, stupid. It's the untold story of how this fracture shapes and experiences our life trajectories, our communities, and our communities' futures, or I should say, communities' future. The top 1% of households now have over 30% of the country's net worth. The bottom 50% hold only 2.6 to 2.8% of our country's wealth. That means the poor are getting even poorer at a faster rate than anybody ever thought possible. In persistently poor rural communities, only 63% of the residents there have access to moderate or even high speed internet. A recent Census Bureau that was released shows complex data on the income mobility, volatility, and opportunity, noting that economic mobility remains an extremely large challenge for our country that we are struggling to get over despite our resources. But yet, there are some parts of the mobility gap that are narrowing, right? Research is starting to show a 27% decrease in the black white mobility gap for children born low income between 1978 and 1992. So there are some gaps that are getting better, right? But we have, with our resources and our brain power in this country, we have a lot of smart people here. We should be doing better. We should be doing better. The two escalators metaphor, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that. It kind of I'll just put it out how I understand it, right? It's a metaphor. Like technology, globalization, asset inflation lift some, wages, opportunity, and infrastructure leave others behind. It's like you can raise the minimum wage, but unless you're doing things to keep costs down, all that's doing is you're just playing the shell game to inflate the numbers at election time. You're not increasing anybody's standard of living. If that was the case, California wouldn't have the homeless problem it has. $80,000 house in Michigan wouldn't be $600,000 in California, right? Just doing that doesn't solve the issue. We have to look at things in a different way. The robber barons that helped fuel America's industrialization, they figured out how to make more products with Americans at a cheaper rate. With Americans, globalization hadn't really taken effect. So I'm sure if it was, it'd be a little bit different, but they figured out how to make money, make it here at the same exact time. It can be done. They proved it. But when it goes down to it, when you don't own an asset that's appreciating, you fall further behind everybody else in this country, even if you're working full time. That goes back to government debt making your money worthless. Infrastructure like broadband is an economic lifeline that we have to have now. Without it, entire regions risk falling off. We have to do better. We got satellite internet now. Everybody should have access. Well, I mean, we've had it, right? But now it's actually high speed. But we should be doing better than that. We shouldn't be having these issues in this country. The untold part of this, the fracture is not simply rich versus poor. It's location, asset ownership, connectivity, and infrastructure. These things matter. But there are reasons for optimism. Like I always got to look at the good side too, right? Organizations are starting to help out rural and underserved communities for mobility programs. There are things that are there, but just like I said before, it's not going fast enough with how we are, with things that we've done in our past in this country. We should be doing a better job faster. Urban tech hubs, you see booming job markets, rising property values, startup economies. In many rural towns, you see manufacturing decline, the brain drain, a shrinking tax base, which leads to dilapidated buildings, the government not being able to maintain things that it normally would. For individuals in certain situations in both areas, it's leading to fewer pathways upward, more fear of stagnation or decline.